March 2026 is the kind of month where the big games don't completely drown everything else out. There are a few releases everyone's watching, plus some fresh games that can surprise you if you're willing to try something new. This list is basically a filter, 15 brand new games worth knowing about so you don't waste time scrolling stores. What's up guys, it's Broz and here we go. We're starting with Crimson Desert, and it's been one of the loudest games lately, judging by the hype and the comments on the channel. Pearl Abyss says it passed 2 million wishlists more than 6 weeks before launch, and the team also confirmed the game has gone gold. What makes it stand out is how much stuff to do it's trying to cram into a single-player action game without feeling like checklist filler. You have that heavy, cinematic melee where you can chain grapples, counters, and brutal finishers. Mobility-wise, it leans hard into climbing and gliding, plus using the terrain to keep momentum during fights. The open-world pitch is built around freedom and spectacle. The studio keeps talking about big set-piece moments like fortress assaults and chaotic battles, plus oversized bosses that look designed to be more than simple damage sponges. Side activities matter too, since this is clearly the kind of world where you can slow down, mess around, and still feel like you're progressing instead of wasting time. Visually, it looks like they're really betting on distance and scale. Pearl Abyss says if you can see something far off, you can actually get there. Their tech demo showed dynamic weather, real-time lighting, fog that reacts when you move through it, and water with waves and tides that slam into the world. And with cliff dives, long glides from way up high, and even a confirmed dragon mount, those huge views should hit hard. Crimson Desert launches on March 19th for PlayStation 5, Xbox Series, Windows, and Mac. Marathon is the game that got a lot of hate before anyone even touched it, and Bungie has basically been fighting the conversation as much as building the shooter. Part of it is the obvious stuff. It's an extraction PvP game that's paid up front. It's not the old Marathon, and the neon look pushed some people away. Then the real mess hit, with Bungie having to address accusations that art was used without permission, followed by public fallout, internal pressure, and a delay that made the whole rollout feel shaky. Under all that noise, the core pitch is still very Bungie. Gunplay is built for fast, clean duels. Runs are designed around grabbing loot and getting out alive, and the game leans into contracts and factions, so you're not just wandering a map randomly. They've also talked about quality of life points people actually care about, like not letting battle passes expire, and making sure solo players aren't treated like free loot for squads. On the tech side, Marathon is built on Bungie's in-house Tiger engine. The dev says it's leaning on PS5 and PS5 Pro rendering tech, including PSSR upscaling to push a sharper image at higher resolution. On PC, the official Steam specs look friendly, a GeForce 1050 Ti minimum and a 2060 recommended. Bungie is doing a server slam from February 26th to March 2nd, ahead of the March 5th launch, with crossplay, cross-save, and a console option to skip PC matchmaking. Solasta II is basically a We Heard You sequel, made by a studio that earned trust the slow way. Tactical Adventures built the first game on a tight budget, but it landed with people who love turn-based D&D-style combat. Because the rules were clear, positioning mattered, and fights had that tabletop rhythm. For the sequel, the big change is presentation and comfort. The game is trying to look like a modern RPG, with better character models, cleaner animations, and a stronger sense of place, while keeping the tactical identity that made Solasta stand out. The other useful bit is how much of the system is designed around party play and role synergy. It's still about planning turns and using the environment, but the studio has talked about making encounters less mathy and more readable, so you understand why a hit landed or why a spell didn't. That sounds small, but it's exactly the kind of thing that makes long campaigns feel less exhausting. If you've been missing that Baldur's Gate 3 vibe and you're feeling nostalgic for turn-based games, this one is a great pick for March. You can jump in on the 12th, but for now it's only on PC in early access. Alright, here comes your favorite section, woke games. But seriously, Life is Strange Reunion is a choice-based story adventure built around dialogue and emotional drama, where relationships and consequences do the heavy lifting. Max and Chloe are back in the spotlight, and their shared history is what drives the conflict. Max can rewind time, but she's got just 3 days before a deadly fire wipes out Caledon University. The structure is dual protagonist, so you switch control between Max and Chloe, and scenes can play differently depending on who you are in the moment, with their own tools and decisions shaping how events unfold. Max still has a time-based ability, and Chloe has a real gameplay role too, affecting how you push conversations, handle investigations, and get through tense situations. Deck 9 is leaning on relationship-driven consequences, where people react to what they witnessed, how you spoke to them, and what you chose to reveal or keep private, and those reactions carry forward into later scenes. The setting stays compact and pressure-heavy, with one contained place that keeps changing as the story tightens. It's built around secrets, personal fallout, and small character moments that snowball into bigger turning points. Reunion launches on all the major platforms on March 26th. Screamer stands out in March because it's built around aggression and contact as part of the core racing fantasy. Milestone is clearly chasing an aggressive arcade vibe, and the whole point is that cars don't just trade paint, they fight for space. The game leans into contact, momentum, and those moments where a race turns into a brawl at 200 miles an hour, which is a very different tone from the licensed sim side of the genre. What's interesting is the way it mixes speed with spectacle. Tracks are built to encourage risk, with sharp corners, narrow sections, and layouts that reward pushing people off the ideal line. And that makes every lap feel like a small story, since positions can flip from one messy collision instead of pure lap time perfection. Milestone's background matters here, because they've been around long enough to know how to tune handling so it feels immediate on a controller. And that's the whole point of Screamer. It's meant to be fast, loud, and readable, with the kind of feedback that makes you want one more race even after a bad crash. 1348 Ex Voto is a cinematic third-person action-adventure set in Italy during the Black Death, with a heavy focus on atmosphere, story, and grounded sword combat. You play as Aita, a young knight-errant on a brutal rescue run across a collapsing country, trying to reach her closest companion Bianca, voiced by Jennifer English. The project is made by Italian indie studio Sedleo, so this is one of those cases where a small team is aiming for a big premium presentation. Combat is framed around realistic blade work inspired by historical European martial arts, so fights lean on spacing, timing, guard choices, and clean hits that feel weighty. The world around that looks built to keep pressure on you even outside combat. Plague fear, bandits and mercenaries, religious fanaticism, and towns that feel lived in, dirty, and unstable. Between fights, the game leans into exploration and environmental puzzle moments, with ruined villages, churches, and cramped streets hiding paths, shortcuts, and small story details that flesh out the era. Another detail that stands out is the collector angle on PS5. Meridium announced physical editions, including a higher-tier pack with extra goodies aimed at people who still buy boxed games. Besides PS5, you'll also be able to play it on PC, with the release on March 12th. John Carpenter's Toxic Commando is basically a love letter to gross, practical B-movie action, just turned into a co-op shooter. The setup is simple. You're fighting a toxic outbreak that's turned the world into a mess of mutants and monsters, and the game wants you to have fun with it, not treat it like prestige drama. It gives the developers permission to go wild with weapons, enemy types, and over-the-top missions. The game is leaning into teamwork and loadouts. Designed for squads, it's built with roles that make sense in moment-to-moment combat, and missions designed around chaotic pushes rather than slow, careful creeping. It's also one of those games that can live or die on the feel of shooting and movement, and the whole pitch is that it's fast, loud, and replayable. Carpenter's name isn't just slapped on for marketing either, since the game is clearly chasing the vibe his fans expect. Slimy horror mixed with goofy swagger. Toxic Commando launches March 12th on PS5, Xbox Series, and PC. Monster Hunter Stories 3 Twisted Reflection is a turn-based RPG where you play a rider and build a team of monsties you hatch, raise, and ride into battle. Capcom's setup leans into high stakes. Two countries slide toward war as a crystallizing phenomenon spreads, and an egg hatches twin Rathalos with sky-scale markings tied to an old civil war. The wider theme is extinction, with monster species fading and the natural world teetering on collapse. The loop stays focused on planning and synergy. Battles reward reading patterns, matching elements, chaining skills, and filling a kinship gauge for rider and monstie techniques. Team building is important, since different monsters cover roles, weaknesses, and utility. A fresh mechanic Capcom highlights is habitat restoration, connecting exploration to rebuilding areas and attracting specific monsters, giving reasons to revisit regions and hunt for eggs. The trial version is already available. It covers the opening chapters, includes character creation, and save data carries over into the full game. Fatal Frame 2 Crimson Butterfly Remake is one of those remakes that isn't just a paint job. Koei Tecmo is treating it like a full rebuild, with modern controls, updated systems, and a big focus on atmosphere through audio and lighting. The camera obscura is still the whole identity of the series, but the remake is trying to make that loop smoother, so exploration and combat don't feel like two separate games stitched together. A detail that stands out is the new hold hands mechanic with Mayu, which sounds small but actually changes how the game feels. It pushes the bond between the sisters into moment-to-moment play, and it also gives the developers a new lever for tension, since your movement and pacing can be shaped by staying together. They've also leaned into sound design in a serious way, talking about advanced 3D audio that helps you sense where spirits are, which is perfect for a series built on dread you can hear before you see it. Mouse PI for Hire is one of those games you notice instantly because it commits hard to a style. It's a first-person shooter drawn like a 1930s rubber hose cartoon, with jazz energy and exaggerated animation, but the actual play is built around real shooter fundamentals. You're a private investigator named Jack Pepper, and the vibe is noir but twisted into something chaotic and violent. What's smart is that it doesn't look like a one-gimmick project. The devs keep framing it as a full adventure with variety, and the tone is meant to jump between comedy and darker moments without feeling like it's trying too hard. That's a tough balance, and it's why people are watching it closely. Also, the art direction can hide a lot of technical weakness in shooters, but here the goal is the opposite. The animations are supposed to make every reload, hit, and weapon feel punchy, so the style isn't just decoration, it's feedback. Copa City is a football event management tycoon where clubs hand you the keys to a host city, and you run everything around a big match. You play as the city captain, working through a 14-day countdown, build transport connections, set up fan zones, hire staff, plan marketing, manage budgets, handle ticketing, coordinate security, and keep residents from turning against the event. Progress is tracked through a match readiness score, with milestones unlocking infrastructure modules for food, entertainment, crowd control, and stadium operations before the inspection. The game also splits supporters into distinct groups, including ultras, core supporters, and families, each pushing different needs. Licensing is the other big draw. Borussia Dortmund, Arsenal, and Bayern Munich are official partners, and their chants and decorations can reshape neighborhoods. Your decisions play out visually in the streets with crowds, flares, and media reactions showing up as online posts and sports press coverage. The studio says the core game is fully funded, and the Kickstarter focused on extra features and future content. Replaced has been in the "it looks too good to be real" category for years, mostly because the pixel art is insane, and the animation sells every punch like a film frame. The game is a side-scrolling action platformer set in a retro-futuristic 1980s, and the main hook is that you're human on the outside but something else is driving the body. You control Reach, an AI inside a host, and the story leans into identity and control without turning into a lecture. What's new right before launch is that a public demo is finally rolling out, which is a big deal after so many delays. That demo is doing two things. It proves the combat has weight, and it shows the world has more going on than pretty backgrounds. There's a lot of small environmental detail, and the game tries to make every scene feel like it has a purpose. It avoids that old pattern where you just move right, then fight, then watch a cutscene. Replaced also plays with depth in its 2.5D spaces, letting you move between foreground and background, which keeps fights and exploration from feeling flat. Nevergrave looks like a cute action roguelike at first glance, but the core gimmick is actually nasty in a good way. You're tied to a cursed hat, and possession is a real system. Taking over enemies lets you use their abilities, which means runs can swing hard depending on what you manage to steal and how creative you get with it. The other big thing is co-op. 4-player online play changes the whole mood of a roguelike, and the game is built to support that without turning into chaos where nobody knows what's happening. Dungeons are randomized, so the replay loop is there, but the hook is the combination of platforming, magic combat, and possession-based improvisation. It's also coming from a team connected to Pocket Pair, and that matters mainly because they're comfortable building systems that create funny, unexpected stories without writing a script for every moment. Nevergrave the Witch and the Curse launches March 5th on PS5, PS4, and PC. Planet of Lana 2 is taking a very risky direction for a sequel. It's aiming for a darker tone and more mechanically dense puzzles, while still keeping that clean cinematic feel people loved in the first game. The duo dynamic is still the heart of it, Lana and Mui moving through big sci-fi landscapes, but the sequel puts more weight on controlling both characters and solving puzzles that avoid the one obvious answer vibe. A fresh detail close to launch is that the team is putting out a public demo in February, which is a very honest way to sell this kind of game. It shows how the new mechanics flow, especially the moments where Lana and Mui split, coordinate, and reconnect as part of puzzle solving and traversal. The studio has also talked about keeping the runtime tight and focused, which is rare and appreciated in puzzle adventures where padding can kill the pacing. Visually, it still looks like a painting that moves, but the bigger change is tone, with higher stakes and a world that feels more uneasy after the invasion. There's more stealth, and Lana moves a lot faster now, with wall jumps and run slides that make puzzles and escapes feel more dynamic. Some puzzles even let you hypnotize creatures or take over hybrid robots, and Takeshi Furukawa is back on the music, so it should still hit emotionally when it needs to. GreedFall: The Dying World keeps the series' hook of colonial power games, faction politics, and companions who matter outside combat. Spiders flips the perspective, so you begin as a native of Tier 4D and get taken to the continent, where rival nations squeeze the land while the Malachor plague eats through society. Your character is training to become a Donegad, a sage and protector, which pulls you into diplomacy, side deals, and ugly compromises long before swords come out. Moment to moment, it leans on third-person action combat, party roles, and choice-driven outcomes tied to faction standing and personal relationships. Dialogue options and alliances can shift who helps you, who blocks you, and which solutions stay on the table. One recent headline is the title change. The studio dropped the 2 and locked the full release date after an early access run that began in September 2024. Pre-orders are live in standard and deluxe editions, and the publisher has already outlined an additional quest for the deluxe pack with an availability date after launch. GreedFall: The Dying World launches March 12th on PS5, Xbox Series, and PC. Write in the comments which March games you're planning to play. Hit like and subscribe so you always stay up to date with the newest releases. And also check out these 2 videos on what to look forward to in 2026. See you in the next one.